Good evening, everyone. My name is Joel Samuels, and I'm the Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences here at the University of South Carolina. It is my distinct pleasure to welcome you to the 2023 McNair Conversation on the American South. I'm especially excited by this series because it aligns perfectly with our vision and mission in the College of Arts and Sciences. As I see it, our college, the largest in the university, has a special charge to adopt a public-facing position where we focus on our impact on the state, on the country, and on the world. And how do we do that? We do that on and through our students. We do that through our research, and we do that through community engagement. This is totally aligned with the vision of our new president, Michael Amaritas, who has, in the past 7 months, identified as his number one goal restoring public trust in higher education. And if you think about that connection between public trust, what does it come from? It comes from establishing impact, the impact of our university on the citizens of this state. We also have a responsibility to bring together multiple disciplines into sustained conversation. In many ways, interdisciplinarity is the heart of who we are as a college and as a university. Tonight's event also reflects collaboration. It is co-sponsored by the Department of Women's and Gender Studies and is hosted here in the School of Law. Every year, the Institute for Southern Studies in the College of Arts and Sciences hosts the McNair Conversations on the American South. Made possible by the generosity of the late South Carolina Governor, Robert McNair, the McNair Conversations are a live podcast interview honoring individuals who have made a lasting and significant contribution to the American South. They are recorded in front of an audience, all of you, and broadcast on the Institute's highly successful Take on the South podcast series, which I hope all of you have had an opportunity to listen to. It is my absolute pleasure to introduce our 2023 McNair Honoree, Lou Kennedy. CEO of Nephron Pharmaceuticals. Lou Kennedy has led Nephron to unprecedented growth, with now nearly 2,000 employees, which produces more than 1 billion doses of life-saving medications each year. Talk about impact. She has been widely recognized for her achievements in both business and civic leadership. During the pandemic, she helped to coordinate the state's coordinated COVID-19 advisory and recovery team. She's been recognized by the South Carolina Chamber of Commerce as its 2020 Business Leader of the Year. She's won Ernst & Young's Entrepreneur of the Year Regional Award and an Outstanding Leadership Award from the National Association of Manufacturers. She is also chairman of SC Bio, a statewide association promoting the life sciences industry, and has been honored with South Carolina's highest honor for civilians, the Order of the Palmetto. She earned a Bachelor of Arts degree in Public Relations. Lou, it's okay that you did not graduate from the College of Arts and Sciences. We're just happy to have it's artsy and science and less, but you moved into the science space from our university. Before I introduce our interviewer and our intrepid head of the Institute for Southern Studies, I do want to recognize a few individuals who are here tonight. There are many who I would like to recognize, but I'll just mention a few. Thad Westbrook, our chair of the Board of Trustees. My colleague and dear friend, the Dean of the College of Pharmacy, Steve Cutler. Lou's other half, Bill Kennedy.
Big round of applause.
Thank you all for being here. This evening, Lou will be interviewed by Professor Mark Smith. He's the director of ISS, a Carolina Distinguished Professor in the Department of History, and as I noted while I was up here, because you're all a little too far away, he sports a pair of socks tonight. Steve Cutler will be proud. Steve Cutler likes some good socks, don't you, Steve? That have on them John F. Kennedy. I said, is that John F. Kennedy? He said, yes. He said, I have Lincoln socks, I have Kennedy socks, other socks. It took me about 30 seconds to realize the Kennedy connection. I'm not that bright.
To which I said, rich Kennedys, poor Kennedys.
And what did I say?
Alive, dead Kennedy.
Tonight's interview will be later released on the Take on the South podcast. Please join me in welcoming Lou Kennedy.
Well, thank you, Dean Samuels. Before we start our conversation this evening, just a couple of housekeeping matters. First off, my thanks Joel is a steadfast supporter of the Institute for Southern Studies. I can't thank him enough for his support. Thanks to Professor Stephanie Mitchum, who is the Director of the Department of Women and Gender Studies, for co-sponsoring this event. Matt Simmons, my Assistant Director at ISS. The absolutely invaluable Laurie Carey, who is the, well, pretty much the linchpin of ISS in many ways. The merch deck you have outside is courtesy of Laurie. Please take the merch. There's bags for it, there's all sorts of interesting things, and there's a very good reason why you should. The day that I received the water bottles was the day that the university changed its logo back to USC. I've got to get rid of these bloody things, so please take them. Folks at Nephron have been extremely helpful. Rod Godfrey, Conor Watkins, Spencer Bethea, thank you for your help. And thank you to all of you for being here. I very much appreciate it. As Dean Samuels said, this is a recorded conversation, so feel free to make noise, although now might be a good time to turn off your phones. And we'll be chatting for about 30, 45 minutes, and then we're going to open up the floor to questions. We've provided note cards, and Laurie can get you a note card with a pen if you want to ask a question. We'll try to answer as many as possible, but we'll see how we're doing on time. If you'd like to listen to the show, you can QR the show. The code is on the posters or the merch up above your head. So let me frame this as best as I can. What does it take to become a leading CEO in the South? How does a Southern woman navigate the highest levels of international business? Does Southernness, and whatever we mean by that, does it play a role in exceptional business and civic leadership? To help us answer these questions and many more, we have our 2023 McNair Honoree, Lou Kennedy.
Thank you.
Lou, we could be here all night. You're a civic leader, a business leader, a staunch advocate for public education, among many other things. So let me attempt to frame our conversation without limiting it. Today is March the 1st, and it begins Women's History Month. And it's going to be inevitable and fitting that we talk at some point tonight about the certified women-owned business Nephron Pharmaceuticals Corporation. But indulge me for just a minute. I want to step back a bit, and I'm going to ask you the most deceptively simple question. Do you consider yourself Southern, and if so, why?
Just listen to me. I mean,
You sound just like me, I think.
this is not a Brooklyn accent. No, I definitely consider myself Southern, and I've lived in almost every state in the Southeast over the course of my life, and I'm very proud Southerner. I'm proud of my heritage. I was telling someone earlier, you know, my granddad started his career as a sharecropper when my father was little, and then went to seminary to become a Baptist minister. And so that's the quintessential Southern occupation back in the day, sharecropping to now. So I feel like I'm pleased to have that heritage. And if you worked with me every day, you'd often hear me use the words, let's just redneck engineer this. So, and I drive a truck now. So I feel like that's quintessentially Southern.
I think you've hit every mark that I could possibly think of.
It's electric, though.
Well, there you go. I've heard you describe yourself, though, as a Southern woman with a New York attitude. What does that mean exactly?
Well, I've also been called a human tornado. I've been called a lot of things, but I just move at the same rate of speed as New Yorkers. I just sound like a Southerner. So I have a lot of energy, and that's probably understating it. I mean, there's really no 20-year-old at our company that keeps up with me, and I do it in high heels. So.
I know lots of people in the audience probably know the answers to this, but I think it's important to kind of unpack background and context. And you've already mentioned your background. Where were you born? What was your family background? My understanding is that your father and mother loomed very large and very positively in your life. What role did they play in your development?
Well, I was born in Kingsport, Tennessee, and my father was transferred here with Eastman Kodak or Eastman Chemical Company when I was 2. So I don't have that twang, but I have this drawl. And I will tell you that I'm an only child, and my parents were just radical about not becoming a spoiled only child. I mean, this was like every day the lesson. And so, you know, if kids in the neighborhood came over to play and they liked this water bottle, take it, you know. So I was, my mom was just so worried about me being spoiled. So that was a big life lesson. And my father was very good about saying you can do anything you set your mind to. So he was very encouraging and probably bigger role model because of, you know, his occupation in life and the way he treated others. And I'm very much like him.
Mm-hmm. Yes. You went to school here. Can you just kind of unpack what you did, what your major was? What was your experience like at Carolina?
Fast. I finished high school at 16. After 3 years, I started USC 2 or 3 weeks after I turned 17. I did college in 3, even though I took a semester off to work in New York. So I was in a hurry, and I did so many extracurriculars in high school that I said, when I get to college, I don't want to do that. So I didn't get involved as I probably should have in the student experience here. I worked 30 hours a week, and I never took less than 18 to 24 hours a semester, and I went every summer school. So I was just in a hurry. I wanted to get out and make money. That's all I can tell you. But I loved my classes. I had a wonderful advisor named Mary Caldwell in the journalism school, and she really impacted my life. And when we made a little donation back in early 2010 or 11 to the school, I talked about to the professors and to those of you in the audience, you don't realize sometimes the impact you have on your students' life or lives. And so she had this snappy briefcase, and she had worked at a PR firm in Atlanta, and I just thought that was the coolest thing, and if I could have a snappy briefcase and get a great job, I will have arrived. So I'm sure she never knew quite how much she inspired me.
3 years, I mean, that's really quite remarkable. I've been teaching it all.
I'm not really smart, I'm just super fast.
No kidding. So it was every summer school that you'd take?
Every single one.
And you'd take 18 to 24 hours?
And then as much as you could take in both sessions of summer school.
And you would...
And I taught swimming.
And you were working as well?
Mm-hmm. Always. I sold clothes so I could get a discount on my clothes. Any of you that have been around Columbia, I worked at Round Robin for a lot of years. So
is that right?
On Devine Street,
Is that right? That's impressive.
I got a little shoe issue, so I had to pay for them.
Could you tell us how you ended up becoming CEO of Nephron, and tell us something about the scale and the scope and what Nephron does? I mean,
Okay.
I think we know some of the answers to this, but I'd like to hear it from you.
Okay, so I started dating a pharmacist in 2000. Somewhere in the early weeks of dating, and some people in the room know this, he said, and I quote, "I love single moms who get no child support or alimony because they make the best workers, especially if they're still halfway cute." He said that, and I'm still with him. Anyway, so about 2 years later, I decided I wanted to work with him. He wanted me to start the national sales force for our company. We're a really small company and had very little capacity at the time, making generic respiratory medications in Orlando, Florida. And so, I mean, I've never started a sales force, and I didn't know anything other than I know how to sell, and I like to close. So I figured if I hired like-minded people, you could build a sales force. So that's what we started to do. Then we started growing the capacity from about 12 million a month to 30 million a month to 50 and so forth, to now we have the capacity to do over 100 million a month in terms of respiratory medications. But I just am all about growing and growth and innovation. It's just how I'm wired. And so he really liked his sleepy company that only made X, and I didn't seem to agree with him, and he let me have the, I guess, leeway to get it done. So.
Interesting.
And with a whole lot of help from a whole lot of people.
Did he fight you on this at all, or was it just go
Yeah,
ahead?
but he didn't win.
Well, he won, but he didn't win, right?
Yeah, I guess it's a double-edged sword, you know, growing his or our company is beneficial, but he really liked the slow motion when I first started working with him. But it's been fun. It's been a fun ride. And I, for 35 years, said I would never, ever return to South Carolina, only to see my parents or come to a football game. And I am so happy that we did. I love doing business in the state. I love being back with my friends. I mean, when I lived in Orlando, the only friends I had were people that worked with me. Here I have friends, and I have friends at work, so that's a treat.
Nephron is everywhere. Which countries do you deal with most often?
Well, we're very saturated in the U.S., and of course, anything attached to the U.S. We do have some business in doing government tenders in Saudi Arabia, some business, ironically, in Norway. It just so happened. And then a few countries in South America and Latin America, and a little bit of business over the years in the Caribbean.
So you travel quite a bit, I assume.
I like to. It's just we're so busy. It's hard to get away for very long. I'm the only wife that promised her husband the Christmas before COVID. This year, I promised to travel with you. We will have 3-day weekends, and the whole world shut down. So he didn't get his promise after all.
Is there as you sort of survey your past and your present, is there a public figure who inspires you? Somebody that you look to by way of example, or sometimes that you think about when you're facing challenges? Is there somebody that stands out for you?
Well, I always appreciate any woman who rises to the occasion and has had to do so through a fight. I mean, let's just look at Dawn Staley. I love her story. I mean, she inspires me, and she's younger than me. But there's so many others, but I mean, top of my list who's not a public figure is my dad.
Yeah. Here's a question that I've been mulling a bit. Do you think that women business leaders generally, in the South especially, are subject to a different kind of public scrutiny or coverage than their male counterparts?
That's an interesting question on this campus. Yes. I am blonde. I have a Southern accent. I'm almost always in a room full of men. There's other than my attorney, there's rarely women around me in most any given meeting. And, I hate to say it, but we are a little behind in the Southeast in seeing what all women can realize, what potential they can realize. I feel that we don't have, there's not enough of us in these roles to show enough of these 10, 11, and 12-year-olds that this is what they can be. So I never turn down an opportunity to speak to young ladies. I feel like it's important. Those of us that are doing these kinds of things in this state, in the Southeast, need to be involved, and we need to do it as early as we can. My mom was a school teacher, a proud school teacher, a successful, awesome one. But, when I was raised, it was the extra money. Those were my dance lessons, my cheerleading uniform. Or her money was the extra something. She was never, ever going to be the breadwinner. And so I didn't grow up thinking, I better focus on being a breadwinner. And so I think the more of us that can do this in the Southeast especially, because we see a lot of women leaders in the Northeast and California and even Texas, but not so much in the Southeast.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting and important distinction. There is a Southern quality here that might not entirely be helpful, and so you're having to sort of double the fight, as it were.
Yeah, it's great to have an MRS degree, but there are other degrees too, right?
That's quotable. I like that. Thank you. Let's talk about leadership for just a minute. What does it mean to you, and does your faith play any role in that leadership?
Absolutely. I mentioned earlier my grandfather was a Baptist minister, and so one of the strongest things that is taught to me in my recollection in the Baptist faith is the word faith, meaning you can get through it. You will get through it. And I've had some really, really deep troughs in my life. And I never felt it during that time, but I look back and I think there's so many women that never would have been able to get through that and just keep on keeping on. And I never felt that way. I just got to feed my kid. I got to get her in school. We got to put gas in the car, pay the rent. We got to do all these things. So I was more focused on today and having that really strong faith. And I'm so glad because I depend on that. This is a hard business that we're in. There's a tremendous amount of stress. And I just call on that faith to get through it. And we asked me, the first part of the question is, what does it mean to be a leader? I look at everybody at our company as my children. I feel like I have to protect them. So in terms of saying I'm a leader, you want to set the example that people feel compelled to follow. And so I don't feel like calling myself a leader. I feel like I've got to take care of my children.
Mm-hmm. That makes perfect sense to me. This is a bit of a self-serving question because it's something I think about a fair bit. When you're dealing with folks from around the nation, internationally, accents matter.
They really do. They open so many doors in New York. Where are you from? This sounds like Gone with the Wind. I mean, I can get people engaged in conversation just because they want to hear, oh my goodness, you know.
I found the same with my Mississippi accent. It's a very similar kind of work. And that's interesting to me because oftentimes when you look back through the historical record, when John C. Calhoun was at Yale, for example, he would, say, well, the assumption is I'm not very bright because the accent means that I'm slow and what have you. But you're saying that you deploy your accent and your southernness in a way to open things up rather than close things down.
Mm-hmm. It works so well. Like if I'm with a sales rep calling on a hospital, New York Presbyterian, let's say, you'll find they lean forward and like, what are you saying? Like, where are you from?
Right.
And I always say South Carolina, and they go, oh, Raleigh. And I go, no.
Right.
Myrtle Beach, Hilton Head, come on down.
That's right. But presumably this doesn't have the same resonance when you're dealing internationally because they just hear American, don't they? Or do they?
Well, most people from other countries think that the Southern accent is the most charming one.
I agree with that. Yeah.
And so in that sense, it's great. But I think other Americans, Americans from the Midwest, for example, think just like you mentioned with John C. Calhoun, you must be a little slow. But when you're outside the U.S., I think it serves us well.
I think you're right. I think you're entirely right about that. The idea of community has loomed large in Southern history. What does community mean for you? And without directing your answer, I'm thinking of your instrumental role in the state's response to COVID-19, but you're involved in communities in many different ways. What is community to you?
It's leaving this place better than you found it. It's giving back. It's taking the privileges that have been afforded to me because of a lot of hard work and trying to spread that joy or that love, or in some cases, money, around to try and help others. My husband and I particularly like to do things for children or for education. He calls me Vicky Volunteer. He can't stand that I'm involved in the community and asks me all the time to pump the brakes. And then, of course, when most people say no or don't do something, I push the gas pedal. So anyway, I really get a lot of joy out of doing for others. And I think when you are in a position that folks refer to you as a leader, you should be a servant leader. So that's just part of my DNA. Plus, I told you I was raised Baptist. I mean, it's part of my upbringing.
Yeah. I'd like your take on about three things. First, I know this is something very dear to your heart, is on the state of education in South Carolina. You're a recognized advocate of education in the state, and we hear a lot about what is wrong with education here.
Which chaps me, frankly.
I know it does, because I did some research on this. But what are we doing right? What can we do better? And obviously, as an employer, you want and you're heavily invested in a fully educated workforce.
Yes.
What are we doing that's good right now? And
well, I mean, a few of us turned out okay. And I'm a public school child. I mean, I think I did all right with my South Carolina education, and I'm very proud of that. We have so many shining examples, and what bothers me the most is that we would much rather talk about one list somewhere where we're number 46 or 48, yet we don't talk about, and let's use the university as an example, we don't talk enough about, do you know that that lady in the dean of School of Nursing has taken that thing into the #1 spot? Let's talk about that. Let's not talk about, oh, we're 46th or 48th. Let's talk about the, international business program. Let's talk about the fact that supply chain in this university alone has gone from like 7th or 8th up to number 3, and that's just since I've been on that advisory council. Look at the record numbers of students in this program, arts and science. There's so many things we could brag about, yet we tend to talk about the negatives, and I think it's detrimental to encouraging more folks to go into the field of education. If we don't celebrate our teachers, why in the world do they want to do it? I mean, so I get really upset by people just focusing on the negative. A lot of people said, you'll never get that river developed. They've been trying for all these years. Well, I've been working for 6 years on a committee to get the riverfront developed, and they said, you'll never get the Corps of Engineers, DHEC, and there's a third one, I'm not thinking of who it is, to agree to let us clean up the river. Well, we did. It's a third of it's being cleaned right now. It'll be done in 3 years, and the Ginyard family has agreed to allow us to develop the river. That's going to be what is the word I'm trying to think? It'll be just a catalyst for a lot of change. That's one of the coolest things we can do for Columbia. It brings... Thank you. I mean, we worked hard on that. And it's the most beautiful city that has not one but 3 rivers that come together, and we don't have a riverfront scene. We need that. So that's one of my little, spare time objectives.
One of your hobbies, yes, right. Why are we negative about this? I mean, you're entirely right. I mean, you can list and enumerate all of these very positive things. Why do we tend to be negative, do you think?
Well, here's an example. On one hand, you'll hear somebody say, oh, poor Columbia. They're never going to grow because the whole downtown is churches, university, and government. How are we going to get enough tax base? It's just not true. The downtown Columbia scene has grown just since I've been back in town. We have to embrace it and talk about it. The folks in the upstate took a creek and call it riverfront, okay? We've got the folks in Charleston that have moved from, it's now, there are more tech jobs than tourism jobs, and that's been intentional. Charlotte was the same size as Columbia when I was a little girl. They said, we're going to be a financial city. They embraced it. Everybody worked toward the same goal, and lo and behold, look what they've become. So, I'm always fancying myself an economic developer also in my spare time. And so I really think we need to embrace our story, embrace the fact that we have state government here, embrace the fact that we have the largest state university here, and just keep talking about it and growing it instead of talking about, oh, if I just had more taxpayers on Main Street. Whatever. We're doing fine.
So this is a cultural shift that you want to see.
Yeah, I think we need to speak it into existence. It's the Lou Holtz theory of winning. Speak it into existence. And quit accepting mediocrity. I mean, I'm not, as I said earlier, I'm not super intelligent. I'm just a hard worker. That shows you can do anything. I have a journalism degree and a science role. I mean, I need James Chappell's degree. If I had that, I would look the part, right? But it's just, you do what you allow yourself to be able to do, in my opinion.
That might be the most American part of being Southern, right? That's the American conceit, the dream. Tell us about what you think about the health of the South Carolina's economy. Much of your business is very forward-looking. What does the outlook look like from your perspective?
Well, it looks fantastic if you're in healthcare life sciences. It's the fastest growing sector in the state. In 2017, we had economists here at USC, Joy Von Nessen, perform a study to analyzed the state of the healthcare life sciences economy, we had about a $12.5 billion industry that now rings the register around $25.6 billion. So we've grown from, at that time, about 400 companies to over 1,000, I think it is. So it's a booming sector. It behooves this university and the others to focus on that and really think about how are we going to train the workers of these, high-paying jobs. I think the average income for these jobs is around $80K, which is more than double the median income for South Carolina. This helps us gentrify the state. It's, it'd be a great story to build that. And you'll find this interesting. The state is sprinkled with 44 of the counties have healthcare life sciences companies, so it's across the whole state. But it's 30-30-30 in the lower part of the state, the Midlands, and the upstate. So there are opportunities for our graduating students from both technical school, high school, and college to get jobs that are well paid. Mm-hmm. So, this is a story we ought to tell, and we ought to tell it from the, loudest rooftops. It's an important story, and we've got such good talent, and we lose so much of it to Atlanta and Charlotte and other cities, and yet we have those great paying jobs here. So I'm always out telling this story. You mentioned that I was he mentioned I was past chair of the SC Bio Association. That association's on fire. That is the evidence of what's going on in that sector. It really is.
How do we stop people from going to Charlotte and Atlanta? Is there a role for the state in this, and what are they doing?
Well, more of my colleagues need to get in the schools like I do. I push myself into certain areas around this campus. And I'm just going to say it. If you really want to get to know somebody quickly, you call somebody in development. Mm-hmm. You say, hey, I'm thinking about donating to this cause. Mm-hmm. And they will get right back to you. Mm-hmm. And I'm not kidding you. That's how I got my first original connection to the engineering school circa 2011, called the development folks. Shout out to Michelle.
What role do you see for the state in developing South Carolina, the state government?
Well, I think the business owners need to be more involved in schools from K through 12 and beyond. It is not fair to sit back and complain about what students they're trying to hire if they're not in the schools supporting the cause of education and being involved. I wish I had more time to do that. I really do, because it's important to know the technical school level, certainly graduate level and post-grad. We have all of those openings. So we really need to work together. There are a variety of different groups. One of them is MEBA, that focus on how do we bring employers and what they need into the classroom. But we could do a lot more. And I always encourage my colleagues in the business community to get more involved. Don't complain if you're not going to be involved.
Are you quite optimistic about the future here, economically?
Well, we had the first tax cut in the history of the state this year. That's something to talk about. We're helping veterans pay less taxes so we can keep those great skills here in the state. We're on track to do a lot of good things, but there's always more to do, always more to do.
I've been going for about 30, 35 minutes, and I do want to open it up to the audience, but I'm going to ask you my last question.
Okay.
What's your biggest fear? What's your biggest worry as a business leader in this state?
Well, my biggest fear is that we don't take care of the economy and the land and the environment, and that our children's children won't inherit what we have. I don't live in fear, but I worry about that because, is everybody going to embrace an electric vehicle? Is everybody going to try and cut down on their carbon footprint? Who knows?
Laurie, where is she?
I'm happy to take questions without the business.
Since we don't have them, I just want to catch this on the mic, though. So.
Okay. I'll take any question except from my husband.
That would be fabulous if you could. Thank you. I would do it myself, but I can't be in two places. Thank you. So, Lou, if you'd just like to take questions, if anybody has a question, please raise your hand.
Hi, Miss Kennedy. It's good to see
I
you.
see you have some news.
All the way from there. It's that big, huh?
Future employee.
So my name is Kim Jamison Crafton. I'm the Director of Marketing and Air Service Development at the Columbia Metropolitan Airport. We do a lot with y'all, and thank y'all so much for everything. My question for you is, what is your advice for women, I'm asking for a friend, wink, wink, in male-dominated industries? I'm in aviation. I love aviation, but there's very few of me, and I want to grow and keep rising in the ranks, but it's kind
Use
of
your voice. Use your voice. You know, sometimes, we're raised in the South to be polite and wait your turn, and I just don't believe in that. I think, Sheryl Sandberg wrote that book, Lean In. I've always said, let's just dive in. So use your voice, and don't be afraid. If you've done a really great job, what can I do to improve my salary? What can I do to better myself? How can I expand my role? I think when someone comes and asks me that just makes me so happy that somebody wants to grow, and then how can I help them? So I think use your voice is the one. I know many of you be surprised to hear me say dive in, like a freight train. Anybody else? Yes.
Wait, hold on. We need the microphone for the podcast. 2023.
A number of times you kept getting back to this idea of the business being involved in education.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean? And I'll tell you why I ask. I taught for decades, retired from South Carolina, and I was just scrambling all the time to just get through, and then in the summer go to school. At the end, I didn't have any money left, so I had to start all over. Yet I kept going, and what do you mean? Give me an example. What should I have seen?
Okay, volunteer to do guest lecture, talk to the students, go to career fairs, meet with the deans of the various schools, and ask them to help. Let me give you an example. I spent some time last Thursday with some Clemson deans and professors. I was blown away that I've asked for the last year for them to add regulatory and validation work, try to, let's say, embed it into the curriculum at the biomedical engineering, the School of Science, nursing, molecular biology. I swear if they didn't march 4 professors that have just been hired in the last 6 to 9 months, and they all were focused on, they all came out of pharma or device. And so they were embedding those people with those experiences in the room. And I was just like, I really went, oh, this is special. I got in my car and immediately called President Clements and thanked him from the bottom of my heart. We regularly visit with Dean Cutler, and I'm always speaking with the Dean of Journalism School, since that's my alma mater. I just asked for this stuff. I've spoken with William Hubbard here about, is there a chance that we spend some more time around FDA law? Can we get more exposure for the law students here? Because how do we know we won't excite them into going into that field? So I think you just, again, use your voice. Got to just charge in.
So, Lou, obviously Nephron has grown tremendously at over thousands of employees now. And you talked about the growth of life sciences in South Carolina in general. For all those companies that are still in that growth stage, they're in South Carolina, and we have all this growth and all this momentum. What could we do as the state and the university and as a whole to remove some of the headwinds that you had and you had to face to get as big and successful as you had? How do we get 10 more Nephrons in the state? How do we make that easier for more companies to grow?
Early on when we opened Nephron, we struggled to get just basic quality employees. And so, I would go to Midlands Tech. What discipline? And they suggested accounting. They like to look for a needle in a haystack. So over time, that fluctuates. Right now, I can't get enough microbiologists fast enough. And so, I've asked Furman, USC, Wofford, every school I'm in, I ask, can you help me get more microbiologists or regulatory folks or validation? And that's just for me. I'd so much rather give money to a school to help students than to a recruiting agency to find them. I'll support that. That to me is a better way to get a student. And what if you get one to stick in South Carolina? This just helps everybody across the board. And one thing we didn't talk about that I should highlight, I am a huge, huge proponent of diversity, equity, and inclusion. All the studies tell you the more diverse you are, the more productive you are. And you also not only need a seat at the table, you need a voice to be heard. So, James, you're aware, we have, 50, I think it's now up to 55% women in our company. We are higher than the state average of African Americans or all people of color. We have 50 countries represented. I think we benefit as a company by being in a university town because the professors are from everywhere. Students are coming from everywhere. If you just look at the flags at the Moore School of Business. And so we've got to, make sure that the folks in our, as company owners, we want people to know that this diversity story, you'll feel welcome in our company because someone that looks like you, sounds like you, is going to be in some department. We have a huge Indian and Asian population, and I'm talking about Vietnam, Korea, China, all over. And we benefit from that. And so I'm always excited when we have a flag wall at Nephron so that if you were born in another country, your flag would be displayed. And so we just added Egypt and Russia in the last 3 or 4 months. Oh, no. He wants the mic. Okay.
I have one question.
Yes.
And I think this is a very important question, and I think it's a great time for you to talk about it because we have a lot of professors, I think, scattered around here from USC today. And my main concern, as you well know, has been how to get the University of South Carolina to graduate students that are interested in their work. What can the university do to help us, and what can we do to help the university to get the students prepared for actual work?
Okay, that's a great point. One of my favorite degree programs here at USC is Global Supply Chain and Operations Management because if you qualify as a capstone student, you're asked to do a project and you may be able to achieve your green belt in Six Sigma. What that does for the student, and the capstone project's always great. It helps us save money. It's worth every penny I spend every semester. But what it does for the student is the very first day they report to work, they either use one of the many tools that they have learned. They Gantt chart, they do the 5 whys, they do swim lane diagrams, Venn diagrams. There's any number of tools. And they walk in and I can say, you know what, we're trying to figure out how to make this visual inspection equipment better or something like that. And the students don't look stymied from that program. They go, okay, let's analyze the problem and chart it out and figure out how we're going to attack it. So I think that's one of, that Six Sigma or making sure that you taught, because it applies to every industry. We need to know how to find root cause analysis. How do we get to the root of the problem, no matter what sector? And so if you can weave that into homework assignments and others, I think it's important to have the students leave the universities as self-starters, people who are ready to tackle a problem, and we're not spending 6 months to a year before they are valuable to the process. There's been in recent years a lot of that. Every child gets a ribbon. Everybody, winning and losing is life. And if you've never been allowed to fail or lose, how are you going to handle that? And I think that's why depression and anxiety is at an all-time high with our students right now because, we haven't given them the opportunity to fall down and pick themselves back up, brush themselves off, and start again. I mean, the best lessons in life have been by the many failures I've had. So I hope that answers your question. I think, giving the students the leash to let them maybe win and lose is an important lesson.
Are there any more
Anything
questions? Thank you.
Now, you'd think my daughter could keep my husband from getting
You
the
would
question.
think so, wouldn't you? You would think so.
Hi. I know you all do a lot of work with high school students.
Yes.
I was wondering if you have already found a return on your investment with high school students, or are you still waiting on that?
No, we have hired so many of them, I can't count them on two hands. And they work with us. Some of them have worked with us since age 16 and 17, and then again every summer, and then come back to work. A couple of them are out in the field as sales reps, actually left South Carolina, and one of them's coming back. So it's, I'm telling you, if I could bring in the middle schoolers and keep them corralled, it's probably the smartest thing, because the earlier you attract the attention of a student, the better it is for recruiting later on. But, we cap it at high school. So, yeah, thank you for asking that question. We love our interns.
Any more questions?
I just want to say, shameless plug, we are hiring in certain departments. We have a new nitrile glove plant. We're hiring in lots of departments. You have students. We need to hire students. Send them on.
Lou Kennedy, 2023 McNair Honoree. You have my thanks. You have our collective thanks for your example, your leadership, and your tireless work on behalf of our state. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Please help yourself to a drink outside, and to the merchandise especially. Thank you for coming.